which I believe he's brought on over 40 salespeople in the last 12 months. So I'm super excited. Can I have a round of applause for Dan Dackombe, Mixpanel.
Thanks, James. So Shelley's clearly a hard act to follow because unfortunately I'm not a failed actress, or even a successful one. So I'm unable to probably convey the same story and the elegance. Evidently James wanted me in the middle of the stage. Okay. So kind of like pre-leaving a technology company owned by Microsoft, you can see a far more relaxed, composed figure here in front of you. 12 months later of being one of the first 5 people in the EMEA market and kind of working out of a WeWork and kind of dealing with all the craziness that I'd forgotten about. No hair, beard, so I'm first up there later on to actually get the headshot redone. So I'm going to talk to you tonight about something I'm really passionate about, and that's about recruitment and talent. Talent is any company's #1 operating priority, and I've spent a whole bunch of time recruiting. So my first year at LinkedIn, I thought I'd never be able to beat the heavyweight record of interviews. I did 136 interviews in my first year, and that was I was literally like 2-3 interviews a day for like 9-10 months, just to make sure I was bringing on the very best possible people that I could within the business. Fast forward 7-8 years, obviously the volume of interviews that I was conducting was going down until I moved to Mixpanel. Before Christmas, when I joined, I'd done 50 interviews, and from Christmas to now, I've done about another 126. Okay, so I spent a lot of time interviewing people, and I guess I want to share with you guys tonight some of the things and observations that I've seen, and some of the thoughts that I've got around hiring talent. And hopefully, some of these things won't just be some shared philosophies that I'm sure we've got, but some of them hopefully will be some practical advice that you can take away. So I don't actually think there's ever been a more exciting time to work in technology sales. And I've been selling some form of technology for somewhere close to 20 years. And the market and the opportunity has changed dramatically. And I think we hear a lot around where we are in the world in terms of the evolution of technology. If we look at the impact that Industry 4.0 is having on all companies, on all industries, the amount of disruption that's happening and cannibalization that's happening to every traditional non-digital first business. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in the room here tonight whose business is based on that cannibalization of some of these larger, more traditional businesses. If you look at the app economy, there's 3 million jobs now in Europe that are associated to the app economy. And bearing in mind the App Store actually only launched less than 10 years ago. Okay, it gives you an idea of the amount of talent that's involved in this marketplace and the opportunities that we've got. Cloud computing has meant that it's never been easier to spin up a technology company. And if you think about the number of competitors that you've now got, and you compare that to 2 years ago, and think about the stack that you operate, and you think about the stack, what it looked like 2 years ago, you need to start projecting that in 2 years' time it will look twice as big. Okay, and so thinking about how do you operate and what's the role that you play within a marketplace that's going to continue to expand is absolutely critical. And the success that you're going to have is going to be based upon the people that you bring on board. The commoditization of all industries and all sectors have also meant that the kind of stacks that we operate within are getting more complicated. And it's harder for our buyers to truly understand who are the partners they need to be working with and who are the vendors that are going to be able to deliver exactly what they want. And certainly if you think about, if anyone in here is a technology buyer, think of all of the different bits of kit that you've got within your business. And could anyone tonight stand up and confidently and competently articulate how all of them fit together and work together and seamlessly provide value for everyone within your organization? The answer is no. And that's only going to continue to grow and continue to expand. And so if you think about the main drivers behind that and look at the volume of VC money that's being pumped into Europe, there's 5 times more money now being pumped into Europe than there was 4 years ago. This year, over 30 billion will be invested in companies like us that are sitting here today. And this number's only going up and only increasing. So there's a whole bunch of amazing change that's going on in terms of the opportunity that we've all got as technology sales professionals. But with these changes comes a change in buying behavior. And this is really where I think for us to start to think about and start to consider, well, who are the sales professionals and what are the sales individuals and the behaviors and the skills that we need to be able to operate effectively within this environment. And you're going to hear me talking more tonight around behaviors than skills, and I'll come on to that. So I guess the dynamic of how people buy software now has massively changed. The concept of, hey, can you get in front of the CEO, CTO, CIO as your main operating priority to sell a product and service is now pretty redundant. In fact, I'd say over the last few years, any time I've brought in a CEO into a deal, okay, they've screwed it up. Okay, so I generally try to avoid, most kind of CEOs when selling technology. We've talked about more choice that buyers have got. We've also talked about the opportunity that buyers have got in terms of the amount of research that can now be conducted. But it also becomes a minefield, and I'm sure if any of you guys have gone through any vendor selection, over the last few years, it's actually pretty challenging to be absolutely crystal clear on who's the vendor that you want to work with and why. There's plenty of businesses out there to choose from. So not only is the choice changing in terms of from a buyer's perspective, how companies are buying technology has changed. And this has changed massively. And if you speak to any of the big VC companies like Andreessen, one of the key things they look at are technology companies that have got the ability to scale from the ground up. So if you look at how a company like Slack has been successful, I've got a few friends who work at Slack, and they will have conversations with companies whereby they can speak to senior people within the organisation and say, hey, 18% of your organisation is already on our platform. They're already using it. They're using it undisconnected, no dashboards, et cetera, et cetera. So this whole kind of model of collecting this groundswell of bottoms-up subscriptions and upgrading them is a particular skill set that people need to think about and need to consider. You also have departmental point solutions, and I'm sure plenty of you guys have got maybe a freemium model as well as an offering that you can go to individual buyers within an organisation. But the buying process has been completely democratized. And so what we're starting to see, or I'm certainly starting to see, is that you're now getting departments converging around software and solutions that never previously converged before, and maybe not even naturally converge within the organisation that you're selling into. And so to sell your product, you may have to bring a team of people around you, okay, that may not historically have always been around. And certainly as you try to move up further into the enterprise, and I've run SMB, mid-market, global accounts teams, selling into the enterprise is super tough. And that's one of the reasons why it's pretty difficult. So more choice from our buyers. The buying dynamic has changed. There's no single point of contact. There's kind of 3 different layers in terms of how companies buy software. And so all of this really, if we think of the foundations of the why this makes sense, the what is the sales tactics, and the how, are the 4 pieces that I want to come on to. And these are all buzzwords and kind of statements and terms that I think intellectually and academically everyone would have heard before and be familiar with. And I've got about 90 seconds to unpack them from which I'll try and do my best now. So okay, so here we go. I'll turn it up again. Okay, so number 1, intellectual curiosity. Everyone's probably heard of that, okay? Is that on someone's pad or on a wall somewhere? What does that actually mean? So for me, intellectual curiosity is around someone's ability to articulate and very clearly demonstrate, not just the value of your product, but be passionate and fanatical about the development of your product and how your product fits into your customer's stack. Okay, and we talk about becoming a trusted advisor. For you to be able to, if you're selling into a sales organization, to be able to competently talk about the various different pieces of technology, okay, that your buyer already has in place, understand the role and purposes that they all have, and to be able to talk with confidence around how your product or service will either complement or compete as part of that stack, to give that buyer the confidence that they can bring the right people around the table to present that plan, okay, to gain a champion's trust and to go and acquire budget for that purchase. Okay, that's one of the key traits. So intellectual curiosity is the header. The application of that is the ability to to undertake that piece of work. Second is grit, and that's around passion and perseverance over time. If anyone is interested in that concept, there's some great work by Angela Duckworth. She's got a great book and also a TED Talk. That's definitely one that I would call out. But grit is basically associated to emotional resilience. And emotional resilience is something that salespeople now need in spades. We talked 6 minutes ago about the volume of technology companies that are now available in the marketplace. A sales rep now is more likely to lose a deal to a competitor than ever before. Okay, and so if you imagine a sales rep's optimum performance as being like a flat line, if every deal they win they have a massive spike, it's going to take them longer to get down to that kind of optimal performance level. If every time they lose a deal, they fall through the floor, it's going to take a long time to bring them up. So when I'm hiring salespeople, it's table stakes in terms of their success stories. Where I spend money and where I spend time is spending time with people, understanding where they failed and how they've pulled themselves up from failure. That to me is a critical piece. And then lastly, it's around a growth mindset. And a growth mindset gets pushed around in lots of different ways. But for me, a growth mindset is really around, after every deal that is either won or lost, people authentically engage with unpacking that process of what went well, how do they repeat that, and how do they stop the things that didn't go so well. And for someone to have that kind of like baked into their DNA and to have that passion to always be developing and always be improving, is, in my opinion, one of those key traits. So intellectual curiosity, grit, emotional resilience, and a growth mindset, I think, are the behaviours that as sales leaders all of us need to truly investigate if we want our businesses to succeed against this backdrop of challenge and opportunity that we see in front of us. Thank you very much.
Well done, mate. Thank you.